On a snowy night in Boston, Eleanor Johnson dragged her tired feet as she opened the door to her apartment. After finishing her third part-time job, she returned home to be greeted, as usual, by a cold room and the sound of her mother and sister laughing in the kitchen. "Oh, Eleanor. You're back," her mother Mary said without turning around. Her voice lacked any warmth of welcome. At the table sat her sister Brittany, who had opened her college laptop. Unlike Eleanor, she possessed a bright, radiant beauty. "Good work today," Brittany said, but her eyes never left the screen. Eleanor took off her coat and quietly approached the small kitchen table. This tiny apartment had been home to the three of them since she was 16. Since her father died of cancer, their lives had completely changed. After her husband's death, Mary drowned herself in alcohol, and although she occasionally worked part-time jobs, it was far from enough to support the household. "Brittany, how was the mock trial in law school?" Eleanor asked her sister. "It was wonderful. The professor praised my argument. Said it was the best in the class." Brittany looked up for the first time, showing a beaming smile. "And I got accepted for the internship too." "Congratulations." Eleanor congratulated her sincerely. Mary embraced her daughter's shoulder and proudly said, "My daughter is truly exceptional. Brittany will definitely become a first-class lawyer. Your father must be so pleased in heaven." Eleanor smiled, but her eyes looked a little sad. When her father was alive, she too had talked about her dreams for the future. Going to college, studying business, and someday having her own company. But with her father's death, those dreams had slipped away. She dropped out of high school in her sophomore year. The family needed income. Mary didn't particularly object to her daughter quitting school. "Eleanor isn't suited for studying," she often said. In reality, Eleanor had been an excellent student. But her mother didn't see that. For 16 years, Eleanor had worked various jobs simultaneously. Waitress, cleaner, convenience store clerk, she did everything. Most of her wages went to the household, covering Mary's medical expenses and, above all, Brittany's education costs. "Look at this, Eleanor," Brittany said in an excited voice. "I'm going to Miami with friends during spring break. It's to celebrate getting the law firm internship." Eleanor took several bills out of her wallet and placed them on the table. "Is this enough?" "Thank you," Brittany said happily, but there were no further words of gratitude. As if money from her sister was simply expected. After leaving the kitchen, Eleanor entered her small room. She took a box from under the bed and started up her laptop. At night, after the family had gone to bed, this was her secret time. Eleanor had been teaching herself business. She took online courses, learned web design, and mastered the basics of marketing. And 2 years ago, she had launched a small online shop. A site selling handmade accessories. At first, it was just a few sales a month, but gradually the orders began to increase. She skillfully utilized social media and developed her own brand image. She never told her family. She didn't think her mother and sister would take what they called her silly hobby seriously. 6 months ago, Eleanor's business took a big leap forward. Her designs were featured by a famous fashion blogger, and orders flooded in. The profits far exceeded her expectations. And last month, she had moved out without telling her family. Not that they seemed to care. To her mother and Brittany, Eleanor was just the failure daughter, a high school dropout wasting her life without success. Contact was kept to a minimum. The phone rang. It was from Brittany. "Eleanor, big news." Her sister's voice trembled with excitement. "Jason proposed to me. He's the son of the Reynolds family. The wedding is in 3 months. You'll come, of course." Eleanor offered sincere congratulations. She could also hear Mary shouting from the phone, "My daughter is marrying into a prestigious family." Brittany continued to talk about the wedding details. A luxurious hotel, hundreds of guests, an expensive dress. Eleanor, make sure you wear something decent to the ceremony, Brittany said. Don't look embarrassing. After hanging up the phone, Eleanor stood by the window, gazing at the night view. The view from her office was magnificent. An upper floor of a skyscraper had become her new headquarters. On her desk lay her business card as the founder of Elite Innovation. Her family knew nothing about her success. And for now, Eleanor had no intention of revealing it. She simply planned to attend her sister's wedding and quietly celebrate. On the day of Brittany's wedding, Eleanor stepped into the elevator at the hotel with a gentle smile. She was a bit surprised at her own reflection in the mirror. The simple yet elegant silver gray dress accentuated her refined beauty. The subtle embroidery at the neckline was her own design. As she entered the grand ballroom where the ceremony would take place, she was enveloped by the luxurious decorations and the scent of flowers. The white and silver theme resembled a winter fairy tale. Eleanor, you came. Turning around, there stood Mary. Her mother was dressed in a flashy red dress, with glittering jewels adorning her neck and wrists. Of course, Mother. It's Brittany's special day, Eleanor smiled kindly. Mary looked Eleanor up and down and said, well, you look surprisingly presentable. That was her highest compliment to her daughter. Have you greeted the Reynolds family? Mary asked. Not yet. Hurry and go. It's important to make a good impression on them. Behave in a way that won't embarrass Brittany as her sister. Eleanor nodded quietly. She walked around the venue, greeting some familiar faces. Old high school friends, former neighbors, and relatives from her mother's side. When asked about her current life, she would vaguely answer, I've started a small business. After the luxurious lunch, it was time for the reception. The groom, Jason, was a tall, imposing man whose eyes were filled with love as he gazed at Brittany. Brittany, dressed in a pure white gown, looked the perfect bride she had always wanted to be. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the toast, the MC announced. First, let's hear a few words from the bride's mother, Mrs. Mary Johnson. As the venue fell silent, Mary walked to the stage with confident steps and took the microphone. She wore a beaming smile. Thank you all for gathering here today for my daughter Brittany's wedding, Mary said. I am truly a happy mother. To have such a wonderful daughter, and to see her being welcomed into such a wonderful family today. Mary paused once and looked around the venue. When her eyes stopped on Eleanor, her expression changed slightly. Let me tell you all a little secret, she changed her tone of voice, continuing as if telling a joke. Actually, the bride Brittany is my only real daughter. A few laughs spread through the venue. Mary, gaining confidence from this reaction, raised her voice even more. Some of you may know my other daughter, Eleanor. Where is she? Ah, there she is, Mary pointed at Eleanor. Suddenly, the venue's lights turned toward Eleanor, making her stiffen involuntarily. She is my other daughter, but honestly, she's a failure, Mary said with a laugh. Divorced, no children, high school dropout, she has nothing going for her. Very different from Brittany, isn't she? The venue was filled with uncomfortable laughter. Some guests had confused expressions and exchanged glances with each other. Eleanor felt her face getting hot, but she maintained a calm expression. But today is the day of my pride and joy, Brittany. Mary continued. She graduated from a prestigious university with excellent grades, built a wonderful career, and today, becomes a member of a wonderful family. I'm proud of her. As Mary was about to put down the microphone, Brittany stood up and said, Mom, may I say something? She went on stage and took the microphone from her mother. Her face wore a malicious smile. Everyone, you may have been surprised by my mother's words, Brittany said. But, Mom, don't tease my sister too much. She might cry. Laughter spread through the venue again. Eleanor remained seated, quietly staring at her wine glass. Actually, my sister has always helped me, Brittany continued. How dedicated she was. She would do anything so I could go to college. Even give up her own dreams. Brittany's words seemed to convey gratitude on the surface, but her tone had a subtle irony to it. So today, I want to express my gratitude to my sister. Because I'm here partly thanks to her. Brittany looked at Eleanor. In her eyes dwelled an indescribable emotion. A complex feeling that mixed guilt and superiority. Eleanor slowly stood up. The venue's attention turned to her. She began walking toward the stage with slow steps. There was a strange dignity in her posture. Brittany's expression clouded slightly. She hadn't expected such a reaction from her sister. Eleanor had always endured in silence, never fighting back. As Eleanor came on stage, Brittany stepped back a bit. Eleanor took the microphone from her sister slowly while wearing a gentle smile. The venue fell completely silent. A look of anxiety appeared on Mary's face. Eleanor held the microphone and looked around the entire venue. There were no tears in her eyes, only a quiet determination. Now, let's begin the real celebration. Her voice, though quiet, resonated throughout the venue. Eleanor stood motionless on stage. The atmosphere in the venue had completely changed, with the laughter from earlier completely gone. Her silver-gray dress, illuminated by the stage lights, made it look as if she herself was glowing. Mary tried to grab her daughter's shoulder, but Eleanor lightly evaded her. Brittany watched her sister with an expression half filled with fear and half with curiosity. Eleanor brought the microphone to her lips and began speaking in a calm voice. Today, I am truly delighted that my dear sister Brittany has exchanged eternal vows with the person she loves. Her voice contained no anger or sarcasm. It was a pure word of blessing. The tension in the venue eased a little. As many of you know, our family has not walked an easy path. Since our father passed away, we have faced various difficulties. Eleanor took a deep breath. Her eyes seemed to be gazing into the distance. As if looking at a screen projecting past memories. When I was 16, my father suddenly disappeared from before us. He was taken by an enemy called cancer. At that time, our lives changed completely. Eleanor's voice trembled slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. I dropped out of high school in my sophomore year. Many of you might think I simply wasn't suited for academics. Indeed, my mother believes so. She looked at Mary. Mary's face was beginning to turn red. But the truth is, I quit school to support my family. After my father's death, my mother was plunged into deep grief and found it difficult to support the household. And my sister Brittany still had a wonderful future ahead of her. I wanted her to have the best education. Eleanor slowly looked around the venue. Many guests were listening intently to her words. I juggled 3 jobs. Working at a cafe in the morning, cleaning offices in the afternoon, and manning a convenience store register at night. I slept about 4 hours a day. She smiled slightly. Yet, I was never unhappy. Knowing that my salary could help my sister attend a top university and study law was enough to satisfy me. I was also able to pay for my mother's medical expenses. Mary had now completely lost color in her face. She tried to mouth, "Stop it," to Eleanor, hoping Jason's parents wouldn't notice. As my mother said earlier, I am indeed a high school dropout. I don't have children. I've never been divorced, because I've never even been married, Eleanor laughed softly. Some laughs escaped from the venue as well. But whether I'm a failure or not, I'll leave to your judgment. I myself am proud of my life. She paused here once and took a sip of water. Actually, I have something to tell you all. The cost of this wonderful wedding today, I'm paying for it. The venue buzzed. Brittany was frozen with her mouth open in surprise. When I received a call from my sister telling me she was engaged, I was truly happy. Because I sincerely wished for Brittany's happiness. I wanted to help her realize the extravagant wedding she had dreamed of. Eleanor continued. You all must be wondering. How could I, a high school dropout, afford such a thing? She smiled a little. Actually, I started an online business a few years ago. At first, it was a small accessory shop, but it gradually grew, and now we do business with Fortune 500 companies. Exclamations of surprise rose from the venue. Some of you might know my company, Elite Innovation. We are known for our innovative designs and environmentally friendly manufacturing methods. From the corner of the venue, an elderly gentleman stood up. He commanded attention with his dignified appearance. Ms. Eleanor Johnson, the gentleman raised his voice. You are the founder of Elite Innovation. The one who graced the cover of last month's business magazine. Eleanor calmly nodded. Yes, that's right. You must be William Reynolds. It's an honor to meet you. The venue was filled with even more buzzing. William Reynolds, Jason's uncle, was known as one of the most influential businessmen in America. I hear a lot about your company, William continued. As a pioneer in sustainable fashion industry, you've become a role model for many young entrepreneurs. I believe your company's revenue exceeded $100 million last year. Eleanor smiled modestly. We're still a growing company. The venue had now completely changed. People who had been looking at Eleanor with pitying eyes until moments ago were now regarding her with respect and amazement. Mary had turned pale, almost collapsing into her chair. Brittany just stood dumbfounded. Eleanor brought the microphone back to her lips. I don't particularly want to talk about my success. Today is Brittany and Jason's day, she turned toward the bride and groom. I'm speaking here only because I wanted to convey one thing, the truth. She took a deep breath and looked around the entire venue. The reason I dropped out of high school was for my family. The reason I worked 3 jobs was to give my sister the best education. And the reason I kept quiet about my success was. She stumbled over her words a bit. It was because I was torn between wanting to be acknowledged and not wanting to hurt my family. For the first time, tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes. But she didn't wipe them away, continuing to stand proudly. I always loved my mother and sister. Even when they called me a failure, I didn't mind giving up my dreams for them. Because I believe that's what family means. The venue was silent. Tears glistened in the eyes of many guests. But eventually, I realized that my own life was also worth living. So a few years ago, I left home and began to walk my own path. Not relying on anyone, standing on my own 2 feet. Eleanor paused here and gazed at Brittany. Her eyes were filled with affection. Brittany, you are my precious sister. There hasn't been a day when I didn't wish for your happiness. Today, I sincerely congratulate you on your union with Jason. She looked at Jason. Jason, I hear you are a wonderful person. Please make my sister happy. Finally, Eleanor looked around the entire venue. Everyone, this is my story. The story of a failure high school dropout. But I have no regrets about my life. Because that journey made me who I am today. From the corner of the venue, quiet applause began. It quickly spread, and soon the entire venue was enveloped in loud applause. As the applause gradually quieted, a strange stillness spread throughout the venue. Eleanor put down the microphone and was about to leave the stage. At that moment, Mary stood up and grabbed her daughter's arm. Why? Mary's voice was trembling. Why are you telling such lies? Who would believe that you've become so successful? Her voice echoed throughout the venue, and the guests once again looked at the two with anxious expressions. Eleanor looked at her mother and answered in a calm, yet resolute tone. Mom, I'm not lying. Whether you believe it or not, that's the truth. Mary couldn't accept her daughter's words and shouted with a red face. I raised you. I know everything about you. How could you, who couldn't even graduate high school, become the president of a large company? The venue held its breath. William Reynolds stood up again and slowly walked toward Eleanor and Mary. Excuse me, Mrs. Mary, his voice held authority. What Eleanor is saying is fact. I do business directly with her company. Elite Innovation was selected as one of the top 10 fastest growing companies in Forbes magazine last year. Mary was at a loss for words. Brittany approached and looked at her sister. Complex emotions dwelled in her eyes. Is it true? Brittany's voice was small. You paid for this wedding. Eleanor slowly nodded. I just wanted you to be happy. Tears welled up in Brittany's eyes. But She stumbled over her words. We always treated you. Even if I were a high school dropout failure, Eleanor quietly continued. I loved my family. Brittany, I gave up my dreams so yours could come true. Still, I wish for your happiness. Her words resonated throughout the entire venue. Tears glistened in the eyes of many guests. I left home to reclaim my own life, Eleanor continued with emotion. I wanted to succeed on my own, without relying on anyone. But her voice trembled slightly. But today, I learned your true feelings. A single tear streamed down Eleanor's face. Even so, I don't resent you. Because family is family. Mary stood speechless, and Brittany shook her head while crying. A heavy silence hung over the venue. At that moment, Jason stood up and walked to his bride's side. He placed his hand on Brittany's shoulder and said quietly, yet audibly to everyone. What I've heard about your family and what I've seen today are completely different. Brittany looked up at her husband's face. Fear dwelled in her eyes. Jason, Quiet, Jason gently interrupted her. He turned to Eleanor and bowed deeply. Ms. Eleanor, you are the one with true strength and love. I'm ashamed I didn't know until today. Brittany's face turned blue at his words. She said in a trembling voice, Jason, about us. We'll talk later, Jason said coldly. Disappointment colored his eyes. Eleanor, trying to ease this tense situation, took the microphone again. Everyone, today is not a day for sadness, she said gently. Today is Brittany's day. Let's celebrate her new beginning. She raised her wine glass. To Brittany and Jason's happy future. The venue was filled with quiet applause. However, this applause was different from before, filled with more respect. Brittany's face flushed with embarrassment and guilt, her eyes downcast. For the rest of the ceremony, Mary sat in a corner, hardly opening her mouth. The color of humiliation was on her face. The perfect family image she had always prided herself on had now crumbled. Brittany stood by Jason's side, but there was an obvious tension between them. Though he behaved politely, there was a coldness in his gaze toward his wife. Eleanor was approached by many guests. Business talk, the secrets to her success, and her remarkable patience. She answered all questions humbly. The secret to success. Eleanor smiled in response to William's question. Honesty, patience, and perhaps a bit of luck. Not just luck, William said. Your talent and passion have led you here. Toward the end of the reception, Eleanor sat quietly alone in a corner of the venue. She was reflecting on what had happened today, wrapped in complex emotions. Eleanor. Turning around, there stood Brittany. Her eyes were red from crying. Is there something you want to say? Eleanor asked quietly. Brittany opened and closed her mouth as if searching for words. Finally, she said in a small voice, "I'm sorry." Eleanor stared at her sister. "Brittany, I don't want you to apologize." "But I must," Brittany said, tears flowing. "I've been a terrible sister. I never realized how much you sacrificed for us." Eleanor quietly stood up and took her sister's hand. "The past is the past. What matters is what we do from now on." The two sisters embraced for a long time. Outside the window, the spring sunshine brightly illuminated the city of Boston. It was the season of new beginnings. 1 year had passed since the wedding. From Eleanor's office window, the Boston skyline was visible. Her company, Elite Innovation, had grown even more over the past year, now becoming a leader in the industry. She took a sip of coffee and reviewed the documents spread on her desk. It was a proposal for a new program to support young entrepreneurs. Eleanor wanted to use her experience to provide opportunities for young people from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. "Ms. Eleanor, your 2 o'clock interview has arrived." At her secretary's voice, Eleanor looked up and smiled. "Thank you, please show them in." She stood by the window and gazed into the distance. This past year had been a year of great change for her. Her relationship with Mary seemed to improve temporarily after the wedding. Her mother uttered words of apology to her daughter and showed signs of wanting to mend their relationship. However, it didn't last long. A few weeks later, Mary began to ask for financial assistance. At first it was modest, but gradually her demands escalated. When Eleanor drew the line and refused assistance, her mother began to take a cold attitude again. Now, Mary was isolated even among her friends. She had lost her former status in society and continued to envy Eleanor's success. Occasionally, she would say at local parties, "That's not my daughter," but no one believed her words. Meanwhile, Brittany and Jason's married life was struggling. The truth revealed on their wedding day had created a deep rift in their relationship. Jason, knowing his wife's true nature, was disappointed in her spending habits and vanity. Brittany desperately tried to salvage the relationship, but it wasn't easy to remove the mask of perfection she had built over the years. The two were now separated and on the brink of divorce. Eleanor's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her office door opening. Turning around, there was an unexpected visitor. "Brittany." Her sister was thinner than before, with a poor complexion. However, determination dwelled in her eyes. "May I come in?" Brittany asked in a small voice. Eleanor invited her sister in. Brittany seemed a bit overwhelmed by the luxury of the office but quickly turned to her sister. "Jason and I are going to separate," she said quietly. Eleanor said nothing, just taking her sister's hand. "But that's probably a good thing," Brittany continued. "I needed time to look at myself. To understand why I became this kind of person." For the first time, she uttered words of apology from her heart. "I now finally understand how much you sacrificed for the family. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know." Tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes. She quietly stood up and embraced her sister. "Brittany, it's never too late to become a real family." The two sisters embraced for a long time. Outside the window, the spring sunshine brightly illuminated the city of Boston. It was the season of new beginnings.